So, Paul, there's something that I've realized. Could you share a real example where the plan, do, check, act was applied successfully? So, the question I have
Yes.
for you is that could you share with us a real example where the plan, do, check, act cycle was applied to successfully solve a major operational or safety problem so that the people watching this can really appreciate how this plays out in practice and in business?
All right. All right. Thank you, Ronald. I was trying to figure out where my limits, because we have to honor the confidentiality clause. But I'll give a vague organization and how they achieved it. So the Plan Do Check Act was used by one of the contractors I worked for. I'll use a reactive example. Reactive is where something had already happened. So we had a system in place to actually they do some EIT works. EIT is electrical and instrumentation and technology. And the team had to pull a cable. They had to pull a cable off a drum. Now, the team actually had a procedure in place that was set up before the activity was started. Now, when the team started doing the activity, and someone identified and said, this actual cable could not be pulled according to what was in paper. And then they highlighted it to the HSE professional. So when the HSE professional raised it to their superior, they brought it on the table. So what happened is we had to sit down with the technical team and ask them, is this system working efficiently? Is it the most effective way to actually do this activity? Now, what happened is that when the products were brought to the ground, some things were not considered. Sometimes the manufacturers do not consider the environment that you're working in. I'll give an example. Myself, who works in a national park, sometimes they will not consider the type of soils that are in the area, because they may have a standard of what range of stability that equipment has. However, you could have something that is even worse than what is provided for in the manufacturer design. And then when you bring it to the ground, because of the work pressures, because of the performance criteria, if no one identifies this, you actually will put the people who are working at risk. So when the engineers accepted the loophole, they proposed a change. Now, when they are fixing the change, we had to have an agreement. Now, the planning phase, it cannot work alone without the do, the take, and the act. Now, the planning phase is the beginning. If you don't do the planning, you can't do the check. Now, when we did the
Correct.
planning, we went into now the checking. For the planning, we went to the do. When we went to the do, we put up the control measures. We put up the right equipment that we saw was more safe, more effective, and then we had to check with the team. Everyone who is involved had to agree. And then when they came in and they said, okay, this is actually going to work, and then we had to come and do a follow-up. We came and do a visit after a week during a walk with the engineers. We came and checked if it was working, and it was actually effective. And from that on, it was actually picked up. And when the clients saw this, they were actually appreciating. They said, these are the proactive ideas that they need in the project, because you cannot always rely on the manufacturer. You cannot always rely on the designer. They always have a disclaimer. That's one thing that everyone should know. The manufacturer, the designers, the people, they are also looking at the profit margin. So they will not have everything in place to fit your needs, because at the end of the day, they need to cut costs. At the end of the day, they need to hit a target. So that is the example I could share. Thank you.